Well, Donald Trump has hit out at Iran's leadership, accusing it of sending mixed messages over possible talks with the US. In a post online, he said Tehran was being unbelievably duplicitous by asking for a meeting and then claiming publicly that they're not having any discussions with the US. He said the US blockade will stay in place and nothing will get through to Iran unless a deal or total surrender is accomplished. It all goes back to comments Donald Trump made on Sunday when he told reporters that talks with Iran were expected to get back underway today. He went on to say that this was the reason he'd held back from carrying out what he described as massive military strikes. But by Monday morning, Iran was telling a very different story, flatly denying any talks were even on the table. Well, let's take you straight to Washington and our White House reporter, Bern de Bousman. Bern, we're hearing completely different accounts from Washington and Tehran. Is this a genuine diplomatic breakthrough that's being handled quietly, or is it just competing political narratives?
Well, it's always hard to say what's taking place behind closed doors, but this is something that President Trump and the White House have said many times since this conflict began. They've often accused Iran of saying one thing in private and another publicly. President Trump and other administration officials have suggested that their belief is that the Iranians are also kind of sending a message to their domestic audience, which could include hardliners or senior figures within the IRGC who are against making any sort of concessions to the U.S. But President Trump has also often, more than once in the past, kind of made these sort of maximalist threats in which he's threatened to bomb Iranian energy infrastructure. We saw similar statements in April, just before the 2-week ceasefire. We saw similar statements in May and then again in June, in which he threatened very severe strikes, but said that there had been some progress being made in negotiations when very little seemed to be the case. But as of now, today, the White House nor anyone else in Washington has confirmed that any sort of talks have taken place, either directly or through regional mediators such as Oman or Pakistan.
And President Trump says regional allies, like, for example, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they've urged restraint because they believe a deal is close. How significant is their role in shaping US policy towards Iran at this stage?
Well, we do know that President Trump over the weekend spoke to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and in some of those previous instances in which President Trump said he had held back on strikes, he specifically said that Gulf countries had convinced him to do so. The fact is that the economic ties and very sizable presence of the U.S. military in some of these countries, in the UAE and in Qatar in particular, means that they have quite a lot to lose from any sort of escalation. Ultimately, they will be the countries that are facing the brunt of Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks, and they do have an interest in this not spiraling out of control or resuming the sort of large-scale countrywide military operations we saw during Operation Epic Fury. And I think, at least to a certain extent, they certainly have the president's ears. He's very close with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and with the leadership of the UAE in particular, and they do have influence here in Washington. How much influence they have over his decision to strike or not strike, though, I think that's very difficult for anyone to say.
OK, Bern, thank you very much. Well, while there's a clear gap between what Washington and Tehran are saying about direct negotiations, there is one area where talks do seem to be continuing. Iran has confirmed it's discussing with neighbouring Oman ways to keep shipping moving safely through the Strait of Hormuz. The two countries sit on either side of the waterway, and they've been talking about maritime security for some time. Siavash Ardalan is from the BBC Persian service and joins us live from the newsroom. Siavash, how significant are those talks?
Well, the Iranians say they are significant, though they haven't given much details on exactly what was agreed between Iranians and the Omanis. What they have said, the little detail that they have given, is that they have decided on a route for the ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which is not the northern route from the Iranian waters, neither the southern route for the Omani waters, but something in between. But exactly what those arrangements are, we don't know much yet. This seems to be something that's been ongoing for a week now, according to Iranian accounts, and not something that happened as a response to President Trump's threats of hitting Iranian infrastructure. So the Iranian foreign minister said that these talks with the Omanis are near completion. But just because they're near completion and just because they have agreed on these detailed arrangements doesn't mean that the Strait of Hormuz will be open. I suspect perhaps it will be something that they agree on, and then that's what they may be presenting then to the Americans to see if they can agree on that as well, and then to go back to something similar to that memorandum of understanding that they had initially, which brought about the ceasefire.
And how are President Trump's claims being viewed in Tehran right now?
Well, obviously, Iranians have denied it. That very first post that Donald Trump posted yesterday or the day before, when he said that the U.S. is holding back on that reported massive military operations that was expected to take place against Iranian infrastructure. The Iranians immediately spoke with their own domestic news agency, saying that they have not asked the U.S. for direct talks. There are no direct talks going on. And also, that's what the Iranian defense minister said. He said that we think it's part of a psychological pressure on the part of the U.S. in order to bring us back to the negotiating table or make our positions more flexible. But nevertheless, we take these threats seriously and we act as if they are going to happen. Hence, we saw that threat that was posed by the Iranians, by one of the Iranian media, saying that if the U.S. hits us, we'll hit back against the infrastructure of the Arab countries around the Persian Gulf. And they published a long list of different infrastructure in those countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, which involved that country's desalination plants and oil refineries.
Okay, Siavash, thank you.